Good evening and welcome. Yokoso, Huanying, Namaste and Bienvenido to our second annual UQ Global Alumni and Community Symposium. Now before we begin, I'd like to invite everyone to take a moment now to share where you're joining us from this evening. You can just do that in the chat box, whether you're in Brisbane or anywhere across the globe. I understand we've got two groups following us on cruise ships on different parts of the world, and I'll come to some of the countries where you are in just a moment. On behalf of UQ though, I'd like to pay my respects to the traditional owners and caretakers of country here in Minge and Brisbane, where I'm speaking to you from tonight. My name is Madonna King. I'm a UQ alum, a journalist and author, and one of the books I've written starred UQ alum Professor Ian Fraser, who led the development of the cervical cancer vaccine. Tonight, we're going to be joined by our Vice-Chancellor and President, Professor Deborah, as well as the Chair of the UQ Changemakers Board, Adjunct Professor Ian Kemish AM, and of course our alumni speaker, Dr Rolf Gomes. And you online, more than 400 alumni from around the world, actually 37 different countries. And I'm seeing Bolivia, Indonesia, Japan, Germany, Singapore, UK, and of course those cruise ships. This symposium is an annual opportunity to connect with our global alumni community, providing not only a platform to highlight and share UQ updates and initiatives, but to celebrate our UQ Alumni Award winners and hear more about their inspirational journeys. And to start this evening's session, let's first hear from Adjunct Professor Ian Kemish, Chair of UQ Changemakers Board, for an introduction and to open the symposium for us. Over to you, Ian.
Let me join in recognising the traditional custodians. In doing so, I want to recognise the impact that recent debates across the nation have had on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I recognise the custodianship and I acknowledge leaders past and present. My name's Ian Kemish. I'm the chair of the Changemakers Board. I'm a former Australian ambassador and a former business executive. These days, I divide my time between business advisory work, a role as a non-profit chair and as a writer. But I'm particularly proud to be chair of Changemakers. I'm joined on that board by a wonderful group of people who represent different walks of life, different faculties. We have representation from the Indigenous Alumni Board, from the Young Alumni Group, and from alumni friends. So we're an all-encompassing group that is focused on helping shape the University of Queensland's world-leading approach to alumni engagement. We're particularly proud to be part of that, and we pay credit to the team at the university for the dedication and the work they've done. None of it's possible, though, without the active involvement of the alumni themselves. In the end, Changemakers is a program for alumni, by alumni, and people are offering their volunteer effort right across the globe, and we need to thank them for that. So thank you from me and from all of us for your continuing efforts.
Thank you, Ian, for getting us underway. And now I am delighted to introduce UQ's President and Vice-Chancellor, Professor Deborah, who will share some exciting updates and new initiatives from the university. Professor Terry, welcome.
Thank you very much, Madonna, and delighted to be here, and welcome to all of our alumni who have joined us here today. I'm going to give you a brief update on how the university's going, and then I'll look forward to answering some of the questions that will come through. But I'm delighted that so many of you have joined us here today. So the UQ community today has around 55,000 students from 137 different countries enrolled this year. Around 20,000 are postgraduate students, and we of course have 330,000 alumni all over the world achieving amazing things. And all up, we have around 7,500 staff at our university. We of course spend a lot of our time focused on our campuses, and all of you will know that we have 3 main campuses. Of course, our wonderful St Lucia campus that many of you will remember, but we also have our important agricultural and vet science campus at Gatton, and of course our Hurston campus, which houses obviously our medical school, our School of Public Health, and our School of Dentistry, plus a number of our research centres and institutes. We have, in the last couple of years, seen 2 major new buildings on our St Lucia campus. Of course, our Andrew N. Liveris building opened in April last year, and it's the new home of our School of Chemical Engineering, and a wonderful new building. And of course, in May last year, we opened Kev Carmody House, which is a new student accommodation building, 610 new rooms as part of that facility. And of course, Kev Carmody House adds to the 10 residential colleges that we have on our St Lucia campus. And we've just been doing a major renewal of our UQ Lake on the St Lucia campus, and building a new amphitheatre. Of course, there's so many photos that are taken by our students and our staff and our alumni around the lakes area, and this is really ensuring that it remains very healthy well into the future, and it's progressing extremely well and will be opening very soon. We've also just announced very recently that from the beginning of next year we'll have a 4th campus, UQ Dutton Park. And this is very exciting. This will be obviously across the river from our main St Lucia campus. Obviously our School of Pharmacy has been there for many years now, the Queensland Alliance for Environmental Health Services, and of course many of our researchers are part of the Translational Research Institute, obviously our Fraser Institute, our Marta Research Institute at UQ, and of course the state government is supporting a new facility which will be translational manufacturing at TRI. And of course our presence in the CBD continues to grow. Many of you will remember Customs House, but we've also recently opened what's now called 308 Queen Street, but it's the site of the old National Bank building, and we're doing quite a lot of postgraduate teaching in that new facility. And we've also got the atrium, which is as you go into the new building, and that is open for our alumni and our partners to use whenever they want to. So when you're next in Brisbane, I do encourage you to come and see that new facility. The university continues to do very well. Of course, universities are ranked, as many of you will know, and the University of Queensland on the vast majority of the major international global rankings sits in the top 50, and that's something we are very, very proud of. We were also named by the QS ranking system earlier this year as Australia's most comprehensive university. That means that we're ranked in the top 300 universities in the world, and there's many, many, many thousands of universities in the world in 50 different subject areas. So it just shows that we are a very comprehensive university, not only in terms of our teaching programs, but of course in terms of our research programs as well. But we're also very focused on delivering a high value and high quality student experience. Of course, the rankings I've just talked about are largely driven by research performance, but we also pay a lot of attention to the feedback from our students. In last year's Student Experience Survey, which is a survey of undergraduate students across Australia, both domestic and international students, did rank us number 1 in Australia for overall teaching quality, number 4 for overall quality of educational experience, and number 3 for our learning resources. And these are sorts of outcomes that A, we're very proud of, but B, we spend a lot of time focused on. And of course, as a university, we've won more national teaching awards than any other Australian university. We spend a lot of our time ensuring that, of course, the UQ educational experience is an enriched experience, lots of co-curricular opportunities. Our students are now very much involved again post-COVID in global experiences. We have our Liveris Academy that focuses on leadership opportunities, our student-staff partnerships, and of course, many of our students are involved in summer and winter research programs, but also internship programs. Very focused with our UQ Ventures team on nurturing entrepreneurship, and these programs are very popular with our students. And of course, our pitch night is for those student-led startups that are being supported through our iLab program, and then there's a big competition that culminates in obviously the particular startup which will go forward for further funding into the future. And of course our clubs and societies and our sporting and cultural and social opportunities are very much part of the UQ experience. A wide array of sporting facilities, cultural festivals and events, and of course, as I said, our clubs and societies. In terms of our research, we are very focused on playing our role in helping to solve global challenges. And of course, there are many global challenges that we're all dealing with all over the world. And of course, health and biomedical sciences, agri-food and the bioeconomy, work in defence and space and national security, obviously advanced manufacturing, critical minerals and resources, and increasingly a focus on energy transition and decarbonisation. Having an impact globally is very important to the university, and just this year we've extended our transnational joint MD program with the Oshner Health System in the USA, and that's where students from the US will do their preclinical years of the MD here in Australia, and then we'll go back for their clinical training in the US. And a very, very, very strong program. Next year we'll see the 1,000th doctor graduate from that program. Our Sustainable Minerals Institute runs an international centre of excellence in Chile, and that's going from strength to strength. And obviously we've got a joint PhD program with the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, and we've seen the first graduates coming through that program just this year. But of course the university's very focused also on international development and capability building, particularly in the Indo-Pacific. And we deliver a range of different programs, and we're very committed to those programs. We had a wonderful Mekong Australia partnership program, really looking at how do you build gender inclusive institutions, and that was a program that went extremely well. And then we obviously had a group of government people and others from the region come and work on a coral reef rescue project, which was important. Lots of global alumni activity, and again, very, very important. You know, we've got 11,000, more than 11,000 alumni partners and community on our Changemakers platform. We've got, and that includes obviously many, many partners working very closely with us, global ambassadors, 600, 40 global connection cities, and obviously established alumni-led networks. This year we were delighted to have with us 90 UQ alumni that came and visited our Heron Island research station to hear from UQ's marine scientists, to tour the station and obviously have a look at the habitats on that wonderful island. That will take place again next year. The rugby benefit dinner has just been held in New York, and apparently that went very well. And we were delighted to see the launch of the UQ Global Chinese Alumni Association here in Brisbane just a few months ago. And obviously the connections that are happening globally are wonderful to see, and we've had alumni events that have been hosted right through the region, but also Santiago as well. So Shanghai, Kuala Lumpur, Chongqing, Da Nang and Hong Kong. And obviously we've continued to celebrate our global successes and impacts. So just recently I was in Vietnam for the formal launch of the e-dengue project, a really important project that's really looking at an early warning detection system for dengue fever, and it's been funded by the Wellcome Trust for $8.5 million. We've had a major MOU signing to conduct research to support Japan's very important moonshot program, which is really looking at how globally we solve some of the challenges facing us. And we've agreed with Emory University to establish a Queensland Emory Vaccine Centre here in Brisbane. And just a couple of weeks ago, delighted to celebrate our UQ 2023 Alumni Awards, and of course the International Alumnus of the Year was Dr Targa, Permanent Secretary for the Fiji Ministry of Lands and Mineral Resources, and a very, very impressive leader to meet and to hear about her experiences at UQ, but obviously what she is achieving since she left the university. So I'll leave it there. Madonna, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Terry. You can't be an alumni and not be proud of everything that's happening here, I don't think. Are you ready to answer some questions?
I'm very happy to answer.
And thank you for everyone for sending in their questions. We'll get through as many as we can in the next 7 or 8 minutes or so. And the first one comes from Masato, who is joining us from Japan this evening. And their question is this, Professor: how can international alumni support UQ's future aspirations?
Oh, thank you very much for that, Masato, that question. And obviously, our reputation is hugely impacted by everything that our alumni achieve. So all of you all over the world contribute to our reputation and our impact, and we're extraordinarily privileged to be able to see that wonderful benefit. Of course, the Changemakers network that I mentioned previously, that's an opportunity for our alumni to sign up to the Changemakers network and really get in contact with each other, to be able to access information about what's happening at the university, to be able to hold events in different regions, obviously across the world. But our alumni, Masato, and we're very, very open all the time to feedback, to suggestions of what we might do in different regions, for suggestions for possible partnerships into the future. We really welcome those suggestions, and obviously any feedback that you have is very, very helpful.
Thanks, Professor. And welcome to everyone joining us from Singapore tonight. Alan asks, are there any plans in place to further enhance the uni's sustainability efforts and address environmental concerns within the campus and beyond? A great question there.
Absolutely, and it's a very important focus for us as a university. We were delighted earlier this year to partner with the University of Melbourne, with Princeton University and NAS Consulting to launch what's called Net Zero Australia. And that was really saying, if we are going to meet our net zero ambitions, what does that roadmap look like for the future? What will we need to do and how will we ensure that we meet our important stated ambitions in this area? So of course, a lot of our research is increasingly targeted towards these important issues, a lot of our education as well. But we also recognise that as a university, we have to role model appropriate actions ourselves. So we were, a number of years ago, obviously, we established the Warwick Solar Farm, which is a very important facility, which means that we are now generating enough solar power to be able to meet more than 100% of our electricity needs, which is a big achievement. But we are monitoring very carefully our own sustainability as a university across a very significant university estate, doing things differently and making sure that we monitor ourselves against the Sustainable Development Goals.
Thanks, Professor. In your presentation, you talked about our global rankings for the University of Queensland. Gina asks, what initiatives is the university taking to enhance its global reputation and attract top international students?
Yeah, no, that's another very good question. Thank you, Gina. And of course, we are aware that the rankings and other ways in which the university's reputation and profile is judged is very important in terms of obviously attracting international students, attracting domestic students, attracting the very best staff, and that's very important to us. But we are conscious that how our reputation is earned is by going back to what our mission is, which is to ensure that we deliver excellence in everything we do, education, research and engagement with our partners locally, nationally and internationally. So we're very focused on ensuring in all of those areas we are performing at the highest standard possible.
Thank you. Our next question is from Don. Could you share some insight into the university's future plans for research and innovation and how it aims to contribute to solving some of those global challenges you've raised?
No, thank you, Don. And it is a very good question. And of course, in terms of our research, we are a comprehensive university, and that's important. And if you think through what we need to deliver through research, it is about economic prosperity, it's about social prosperity, it's about cultural prosperity, and irrespective of area of research, our research right across our university contributes to those goals. But we also recognise that it's important to be involved in both fundamental research, basic research as it's often called, but to make sure that we are translating and involved in the translation of our research findings and outcomes into clinical practice, into policy making, into the ways in which we recommend that government deals with particular problems, but also that we commercialise those outcomes and help grow our economy and global economies. But as I've said, we are also increasingly focused on major programs of research that do address the big global challenges ahead. And we know that we need to do that in partnership with industry and in partnership with government. And increasingly, we are ensuring that we are working in partnership, as I say, with industry and government, but also with our colleagues around the world, because the big challenges facing society looking forward won't be solved by individuals. They'll be solved by teams working together to address those big challenges.
Thank you, Professor. And a final question coming from Germany tonight, and good evening to all our alumni in Germany. Gudrun asks, could you provide an update on any partnerships or collaborations the university has established with global organisations or institutions? You've touched on that. Can you go into that?
Yes, I'm certainly very happy to go into it. And obviously we have many different links at the level of our researchers and our research groups. Our researchers collaborate all over the world. I mentioned our major partnership with the Indian Institute of Technology in Delhi, and that's a very important partnership. We also have a deep partnership with the University of Exeter in the UK. The Technical University of Munich is one of our more recent, what we call flagship partners. And so this is where we will work across a range of different research programs, often engaged in some joint teaching, but certainly some joint PhD supervision. So our goal in relation to our global profile is to ensure that we are building those strong partnerships all around the world to ensure that we're engaging obviously with our alumni, which is very important, and often they'll be built on links with our alumni and other partners, but also that we are working together, to go back to the previous question, to help solve some of the big challenges facing us.
Thanks, Professor Terry. We appreciate your time and everything that you do for the university. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madonna, and thank you again to our alumni. We really appreciate your interest in the university and your commitment to the university, and we are inspired hugely by all that you are achieving. So thank you very much.
Lovely words. And now to our guest, Dr Rolf Gomes, cardiologist and founder of the game-changing mobile medical service Heart of Australia, which provides access to essential medical care to underserviced rural and remote communities. Dr Gomes was a 2022 UQ Vice-Chancellor's Alumni Excellence Award recipient, and he shared a short video about his work.
1 in 5 people in the city suffer from some form of cardiovascular disease. In the country areas, it's actually a bit higher than that. It's about 1 in 4. And you encounter at the coalface firsthand how difficult it is, the distances involved, the burden of displacement from your community to have to travel to and fro before someone could tell you if the pain in your chest has got anything to do with your heart. It causes a lot of stress. For the Indigenous communities, one of the things we've found is they really appreciate trying to look after the patient within their existing cultural framework. We've taken an idea from a vision to a reality, and the referrals to the service is growing almost exponentially.
Cardiologist Rolf Gomes, hello.
How are you, Madonna?
I'm well, thank you. Now, we're going to come to your work in just a moment, but I want to take you back to Calcutta, where you were born, and I think an event there coloured the lives of your whole family. I suspect it also set in train a journey that's been behind your remarkable contribution to medicine. Just tell us what you remember about the early years in Calcutta.
Well, it was a good place to be as a kid, catching a rickshaw in the monsoon rain to school, flying kites from the balcony. But, in Calcutta, like many underdeveloped countries, your death and your mortality is always present. My brother passed away with what I suspect was appendicitis at the age of 5, and it certainly had a very profound impact on my parents after that.
So let's go back a step, and I'm sorry to hear that. So what did your mum and dad do?
Well, profession-wise, my mum worked for Dunlop's as a reception secretary. My dad worked in customs, and then later on at the airport.
So you're one of how many children?
Originally one of 5, now one of 4.
And this was your older brother?
This was the eldest brother, Clive, who passed away.
And how old would he have been?
Well, he would have been, I think, 4 years older than me.
So you were...
I would have been 1 or 2 at the time.
And do you remember any of that time? Was he taken to hospital? Was there...
When I asked my parents, essentially what happened was he was very unwell. They took him to hospital, and I think they had an issue with the power in the hospital, and they said, look, take him home, bring him back the next day, and sadly he passed away overnight.
Did you have any connection to medicine at that point?
Look, I think not at that age. I was very young.
I know, I mean your family.
Well, my mother, my mum, my grandfather from my mum's side was like a village doctor. So living in a little sort of 2-bedroom house in a village called Krishnanagar, there was a curtain and people would knock on the door every day, bringing babies, coming in, and my grandfather would go and do something behind the curtain. I didn't know what it was, but there were people coming all the time. And I remember looking under, they had this like a little chest, a wooden chest, and there was his stethoscope and a few pills in a cupboard. And so I don't know what sort of medicine it was, but it was medicine of some sort.
And then this terrible thing happens, this life-defining thing. I can only imagine the impact of that on any parent, probably particularly your mum. How did that change your childhood?
Well, I think, ironically, whilst it made my parents eager for maybe one of their children to transition into medicine, pursue a career in medicine, it also made them very fearful of the medical system. Having had that experience, a fairly negative experience.
They didn't like doctors.
They didn't like doctors.
Yes.
And,
well, there's an irony there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Isn't your brother a doctor too now?
My brother's a doctor, my sister's a nurse.
There you go.
Yet my parents had a fear of doctors.
Yeah, and perhaps understandably. So you're 9 when you come to Australia, and I think your parents had a couple of $100, 4 children and 4 suitcases, and they came in search of a better life. Did they find it?
Absolutely, and a lot of what's been behind my passions ever since has been that real sense of gratitude. I mean, just something simple like being able to get a university education and having HECS to support you to achieve that. You know, it's something we take for granted, but it's been incredible opportunity for myself and my brothers and sisters.
And did you love school? Did you relish study?
I think I was reasonable at school, and I didn't have to particularly work that hard to do well at school. I wasn't particularly good at sports. I thought, well, you know, might as well concentrate on what you're good at.
Can't be good at everything.
No, even in the later years in high school, you know, other people had partners for the formal and the dance. I never.
Well, we're going to come to that. We're going to come to that. But before we get to that, you know, I introduced you as a cardiologist, but I understand at first you became an electrical engineer. Why?
Well, I was good at maths and science, and I still like maths and science. I still find myself sometimes looking at my old textbook. So I was naturally drawn into that. I applied for a scholarship, and I almost succeeded at the University of Melbourne, and then naturally went into it.
And so you said that, you told me offline that you like talking to people more than computers, and that kind of fed your passion originally to go into medicine.
It did, very much so. I soon, you know, whilst I loved the intellectual aspect of engineering, the maths, the science, the physics, ultimately when I look back at my whole high school days, what I loved most was just chatting to people all day. Yeah. I worked as a waiter for 9 years and I loved it. Loved just chatting to complete strangers and finding out about their lives. And I thought if I was going to do something for the rest of my life, that would have to be a big part.
Well, how did your parents take that? Did they love that you had decided to change to medicine, or?
Yes, I mean, I had a very good job after graduating from engineering, working for a petrochemical company. So I think they were a little bit concerned, you know, going back to wiping down coffee tables, another 4 years in a completely different career. But they understood that ultimately I had to find something which suited my personality.
Yeah, so that suited your personality. What did you love about medicine early on?
The thing I loved about medicine, and I still do, is that there's very few professions where you get exposed to that entire gamut of human emotion. You know, real happiness when a baby's born, sadness when someone passes away unexpectedly. And it challenges you as an emotional being in a way very few professions can. Yes. When you tell someone there's a 3 or 4% chance of dying during an operation, and they're happy to go ahead with it because they trust you so much. Yeah. It's an incredible privilege.
So why cardiology?
Well, to be honest, if you've done engineering before, the other stuff's just too hard.
No,
cardiology is the most attuned to engineering. I mean, at the end of the day, when we were doing the cardiology unit, I looked at the heart. It's a pump. It's got some plumbing, some electrics, some valves, some pistons. I thought, well, I could be potentially quite good at this.
Yeah, a bit like electrical engineering.
Well, it's probably the most similar if you've got an engineering mindset.
So you just became a registrar and you decided to start something called Heart of Australia, this service. Why? What was behind that decision?
As a personal driver, just an incredible sense of gratitude for where I'd ended up, having found myself in a rickshaw in Calcutta to now entering a cardiology training program. I found myself out in the regions at the coalface.
How? Were you drawn to the bush, or was that part of your training?
It was part of your training, but it allowed me to see firsthand what the issues were.
What did you see then as the issues, and are they the same issues now?
I saw a different type of medicine for people in the country as opposed to the city. If you had pain in the chest in the city, you could duck out on your lunch break and have a stress test. If you had pain in your chest in the country, you were looking at 3 days to travel somewhere to run on a treadmill for 9 minutes or try some Mylanta.
Yes, but this would have been a bit odd to your peers, I would have imagined. You're just graduating, you know, your early couple of years, and you're talking about buying trucks and heading out west. What did your superiors say?
A good question, and certainly there was the advice, Rolf, you've got to be careful about, you're just at the start of the career, your professional reputation, to which I used to say, what reputation are we talking about? And, you know, there's a saying, there's a song, I think Janis Joplin sings it, Bobby McGee, where it says, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose.
Yes.
I had no professional reputation. I didn't come from a long family of doctors. My dad was a bookings clerk at the station, at the train station. My mum was a secretary. I had no professional familial reputation to protect.
You felt as though you had nothing to lose.
I had no money to lose.
But everything to gain in helping other people.
I think so. The curiosity and the passion, and when the criticism would come, I would sort of look at myself in the mirror and say, look, Rolf, at the end of the day, is what you're trying to do going to help people who would otherwise miss out?
Yeah.
And the answer was always yes. And I thought, why not?
So you mortgaged your home to be able to fund some of these plans. I just want you to take us inside that conversation when you come home. You sit down with your wife and you say,
yes,
this is my plan.
It had been a couple of years trying to find sponsors for the program, and eventually we found a couple who'd put in a few dollars. My wife's from Rockhampton. We were driving back from Rockhampton after a nice relaxing holiday, going past the big crab at Miriam Vale, and a truck overtook. And I thought, here's my opportunity. And I said, you know, when we get back to Brisbane, I think I'll ring Paddy, who was our banker at the time, and see if we can refinance the house and borrow some money. And there was pin drop silence for the next 5 hours off the drive. I should have waited till we were closer to home. But, you know, you do need a supportive spouse.
Yeah.
And I've been very lucky in that regard.
Yeah. So a mystery donor then provided $1 million. Is that right? That actually allowed you to get kick-started?
Well, we had one truck, and we were getting very busy with the one truck because people out in the community just loved it. The GPs loved it, the patients loved it, and the letters were coming left, right and centre. When are you going to bring your truck here, there and everywhere? And we needed another truck, and eventually someone put up their hand and said, we love what you're trying to do. We understand very clearly who's benefiting from this, and we'd love to help you out. And it was just before Christmas, they offered me $1 million, and I almost fell off my chair, and I said, wow. Why not?
So the power of philanthropy, we don't acknowledge it enough, do we? And how it can actually change lives.
That's right. And we've been very lucky with our program, with the like-minded companies who understand. I think everyone gets what we're trying to do. People out in the bush miss out. Huge disparities in health outcomes if you live out of the cities. And I think Australians also like to support a battler.
Yeah.
And to me, I certainly found that an individual putting up their hand, having a go at something, taking a few risks, mortgaging their house, having their own skin in the game, they said, you know, we like this guy.
Yeah.
And if he's willing to do that, we'll do our bit as well.
So how would you describe the rural disadvantage in health? I mean, how much bigger is the chance of perhaps dying of a heart attack in rural or remote Australia than it is in a city?
Well, in 2011, there's an article from the Bureau of Statistics, Health Outside Our Major Cities, and I remember reading it, and it said if you lived out in the bush, you're 44% more likely to die of a heart attack. And there have been numerous other research papers which have said the same thing. And, you know, whilst I'm not a hardcore researcher, I thought, you know, I just wanted to do something and make sure people weren't dying in the meantime. So,
was there a time early on where you felt like giving up, that the chances of this working just were too big?
You know, it took 3 years to find the first sponsor, and that was a lot of trips interstate, a lot of trips to Canberra, a lot of writing letters. So after 3 years with an idea and not a single sponsor, it was hard.
Did you think about giving up?
No, not really.
Yes.
I thought eventually a crack would appear, and that's all I needed.
Yes, and did you change your vision at all during that time, or you stuck with your plan?
Well, I think I certainly knew how to talk about it to sponsors differently. There were many meetings where I saw the eyes glaze over.
But some didn't. So
Some didn't.
you went from 1 truck to 5, I think 30 specialists, 17,000 patients. Any idea of the number of lives you have saved by providing health checks or heart checks to people outside the capital cities?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one which I've thought about. When we looked at all the critical presentations, and taking that number and dividing it by 3 based on the fact that, a first heart attack kills about a third of people on the spot. Somewhere between 700, 750 patients potentially lucky to be alive over the last 10 years, having walked up the stairs of those mobile clinics.
You said first heart attack. Is someone more likely to have a second heart attack if they've had a first one?
Well, I think if you survive your first heart attack, you're very lucky.
Yes.
Because you're now on a path which is going to change your prognosis, your future health significantly.
Yes.
But we hear of people who, out of the blue, they have a heart attack and that's the end.
Yeah.
And that's very tragic.
So you've spent so many days, nights, weeks, months travelling rural Australia. Got a favourite town?
I love Winton. I love St George.
Tell me why those two.
Winton, every time I'm there, there's something in the air that as you stand in the main street of town, you think, it must have been a bustling centre in the heyday. You just get that sense of what outback Australia would have been like. St George, I've just had great friendships over there over the years, and it's a beautiful town, St George, with the jacaranda trees, and the people in country Australia are lovely everywhere.
I was born in Roma, just up the road from St George, really.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So look, your dad died in 2016 from cancer, and I think your mum died in 2020, but of a heart attack. Her son's a cardiologist. Can I be so bold as to ask, did she have checkups?
Ironically, no, because there was this fear of going to doctors, fear of finding out what might be wrong.
That stayed with her whole life?
Yes, I think so. And also I think there's a cultural element to it as well, where, you live your life and when the day comes, it comes. The tragedy of it all is, especially in cardiology, when you find things, you can usually fix them.
Yeah, because it's a good news story, isn't it? You go to
Absolutely.
a doctor and they say, we need to fix this.
Yes.
You're not likely to get a prognosis that is going to be
That's right. It's
terminal.
It's very there is no cancer in cardiology, certainly. And so, if you go to a doctor with symptoms which may be your heart, if there is a problem there, you're happy you know about it because it can be fixed. And if there isn't a problem, well, you're happy you know that as well.
You heard that we are being listened to tonight with people from across the world, 37 different countries, more than 400 alumni. Why is it that many people, perhaps over 40 or over 50, maybe perhaps males, correct me if I'm wrong, won't go to the doctor, followed your mum's path? They're not all afraid of doctors.
Yes.
Is there this won't happen to me?
I think no one wants to think they have a problem with their heart, because it's such a thought which is not pleasant to think that there might be something wrong with your heart. So getting over that fear, it's and it is probably more an issue in males, especially country males, who are very stoic, and their stoicism doesn't help. I love when country men turn up with their wives, because wives make great lie detectors.
They tell you the truth.
They do. And I always invite them in and I say, take a seat, and I take one history and then I take the next.
And how often do they match up?
Well, yes, let's just say they're a great resource to have in the room.
I think I know the answer to this, but what is the main cause of cardiovascular disease?
The main cause of cardiovascular disease is lifestyle factors. So obesity, smoking, and obesity and diabetes, well, they go hand in hand, sedentary lifestyle. But without a doubt, there are some genetic factors as well, family history certainly, and recently even things like depression have been shown to be an independent risk factor.
Is a male more likely to have a heart attack than a female?
For women who are pre-menopause, that's true. Postmenopausal women are as equally likely as males.
And you mentioned lifestyle. Are we looking after our hearts more, or is the incidence of heart attacks growing?
No, the treatments are becoming terrific, especially the primary prevention treatments. So talking about things like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, getting on treatment for it, where the finish line isn't how you are in a year's time or 2 years, but how you are in 10 years or 15 years. And, taking a tablet for your blood pressure or your cholesterol, you're not going to feel any different tomorrow. But we're looking at making a difference down the track.
I've got to ask you this. Do you practice what you preach? Do you do all those things?
I do, and I take the tablets for my cholesterol because my family history is not good.
Yeah.
And for my blood pressure.
It's good for people to hear that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do, absolutely.
So I'm told, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm told that you have become an honorary member of the Australian Trucking Association. And I want to know, where does that sit with all your other awards, which actually includes the Vice-Chancellor's Alumni Excellence Award?
It's the Queensland Trucking Association, but I love it. And because, our program has been built upon partnerships and people who are in industries unrelated to health. Trucking companies, airline companies, mining companies. But at the end of the day, we all want a very similar thing, which is to have an equal chance at a long and healthy life. And people understand that people in regional areas don't have that chance. It's a very simple story to tell what you're trying to do. We're trying to get out there, and if you've got pain in your chest, there's someone here who can put a stethoscope on your chest, put you on a treadmill and give you an answer. Is there a problem there or not?
So when someone told me about that Queensland Trucking Award, they also told me that you used to wear a pair of black leather pants. And I'm just really intrigued here. At what point did you wear those, and do you still have them?
I do still have them, and they probably tie into the risk-taking element of my personality. There's probably a common thread there. And because, Heart of Australia did involve some risk-taking, certainly. But look, if you've never worn a pair of black leather pants, put them on and you're going to have a good night.
I'm not going to ask anything else. What has your wife got of you on these black leather pants?
Well, I met my wife in black leather pants.
You wore them that
Yes.
night? Well, there you are. They worked, didn't they?
Yes.
Let's get back to the serious stuff. The equipment in the truck. I mean, I guess that feeds your passion for electrical engineering too, but what type of equipment is taken out to the bush?
Well, in the early days, and being engineering background, I'm very grounded in the truth. People used to say, tell us about the high-tech technology you're taking out there. And we were trying to bring bread and butter services out to people in the country. As an example, most of what a cardiologist like myself would see is people with chest pain, where you need to put them on a treadmill and do a stress test. At one stage, we were seeing 12 towns around the state, and only one of them had a stress testing service, which was Roma. And, stress testing was invented in the 1950s. So this is where we were, trying to bridge the gap in equity to basic bread and butter services, basic tools which reflect modern medicine, how we do our job. And having the trucks there's no point me being 1,000 kilometres out of the city with just my stethoscope. You need your toolbox with you.
So what's in that toolbox? What's in the truck?
Well, the first few had ultrasound machines, treadmills, lung function testing machines, sleep apnea testing machines. And then later on, we've just moved into mobile radiology as well, which, believe it or not, is the world's first.
This is the CT scanner?
That's right.
Built
yes.
in a car park somewhere in Queensland?
That's right. The world's first battery-operated CT scanner built in workshop in Narangba in Queensland. The world's first battery-operated CT scan done in Narangba in Queensland. So it was great, and we're very excited about that.
So you take these trucks out to the bush, rural and remote Queensland, or do people line up for the services, or are country folk as less inclined to go to the doctor as many of their friends in the city?
Look, I think it's not a question of less inclined, it's just so busy. And it's if it's just rained and you're planting a crop, if there's 10 trucks coming and you need to muster all your cattle to get them on there, and sometimes having to travel to access care is just not an option.
Yeah.
You're too frail. There's the cost, leaving if you're a carer for a loved one, and a lot of GPs understand that, so the referral's never made. So getting referred, then having a service at your doorstep, it makes all the difference. Being home half an hour as opposed to 3 days later.
And I can imagine the panic if you had heart pain or a symptom and you had to drive 5 hours to the nearest regional centre.
Yeah, well, I remember a fellow when I was a registrar at the outpatients cardiology clinic at Royal Brisbane, and I spoke to him and I said, well, you've got pain in your chest, it could be your heart, you'll just have to come back in a fortnight for a stress test. And he almost started crying. And I said, what's the matter? And he said, I've just driven from Longreach. It's 1,200 kilometres. I've slept in my car overnight because the cost of the hotel's too much. And you're telling me I've got to come back now in a fortnight. And I knew when I told him that he would have to make a third trip after that to see what happens next. So, I mean, when you're having those... I just saw him on that one visit, but he would have had to made the second trip.
So are you able to take the trucks into Indigenous communities at all?
Absolutely.
And what are you finding there?
Well, I think bringing a service right parked in the main street of town, by a river, by a skate park, it's so much more accessible than walking into a big grey building, taking a number, taking a seat, waiting to be called in.
Thousands of kilometres away.
Thousands of kilometres away. We have some very, very strong Indigenous partners who we work with, and they love the fact that it's the one-stop shop. Tell me about your symptoms. Well, it could be your heart. Rather than say, here's a referral to make a booking 1,000 kilometres away, step in the room next door. I'll tell you very quickly if there's an issue there or not. They love it.
And you've told me a story offline about an Indigenous man. Just tell our alumni that story.
Well, there's a lot of challenges in Indigenous health, and a lot of it comes down to the trust in the relationship, essentially. And, we've heard in the media recently about maybe we should do things with Indigenous patients as opposed to for Indigenous patients. And I really don't know if it's that simple. I mean, this fellow who I saw, he was a young gentleman in his late 30s, had a massive heart attack, was in quite severe heart failure and really on a very slippery slope to a very short life. And I called him in and we had a conversation, and I was trying to explain to him what had happened to his heart, what we needed to do, the science, and it's very hard to have him engaged in the conversation. And out of desperation, I didn't know where to go with this conversation because it wasn't going anywhere. And a few moments before that, I was outside standing on the veranda of the truck, and I said to him, Reg, look, I don't know if you think I'm a good doctor or a bad doctor, or whether what I'm saying to you is making any sense, but earlier on I was outside and I saw you got 3 young kids playing, and they're about the same age as my kids. And I said, Reg, I think your kids are about the same age as my kids, and look, I know I want to be alive to see my kids grow up. I'd like to see maybe my grandchildren one day, and I think you'd want the same thing, to maybe be around to see your kids grow up and see, maybe one day see your own grandchildren. And, there's this sort of silence in the room because I think whatever I needed to say had been said at that point. I was waiting for him to tell me what to do. Yes. Because I'd sort of played my last card, And he looked up at me and he had like tears in his eyes, and I was getting very emotional as well at that time. And he said, all right, well, what do you think we should do? And he said, what do you think we should do? And I always remember it because in that sort of very sacred moment, like trust descended into the relationship. It entered into the room, and he became a fantastic advocate for his community.
And he survived, and
Yes. Well, he took all his tablets, his heart function improved. He brought his uncles, his aunties to come visit. And, I always think, we've got to find that, we've got to have the trust in the relationship as the foundation upon which we can build everything else.
None of this would have happened, I'm thinking, if you didn't dance on the edge a little bit, go outside your comfort zone, take a risk. And what was the song you mentioned? Me and Bobby McGee, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. I wonder if, whether it's young students or people thinking about startups or in the charity space or even our own children, we should be teaching them to take more risks, to be courageous in doing, and risk losing.
I think so, and there's a great piece of writing called "The Man in the Arena," which really talks about the person out there taking the risk, and especially when you're young, because as you get older, you get more responsibility, kids, mortgages. When you're young and you have an idea and you're in that idealistic phase of your life,
and you have nothing to lose,
and you have nothing to lose, that's the time to do it. In terms of what men can and can't do, it's usually what some do and don't, as opposed to what some can and can't.
Yes, exactly.
Like people say, how did you build Heart of Australia? And I said, we sort of did it by doing it.
Yes.
And
have you made mistakes along the way that you wish you hadn't?
I made lots of mistakes along the way, but as long as they, you weigh up the upside and the downside, and how deep the hole is. And would you be able to pull yourself out of it?
Yes.
And but if you don't make mistakes, you're not taking enough risks.
We've got some wonderful questions coming in. Let me ask you one more before we go to questions coming in from our alumni. What piece of advice would you give a young Rolf Gomes, and you're sitting today doing a medical assignment or an economics exam or an engineering assignment? What advice would you give yourself?
Well, I always think that, to learn how to protect your idea and your vision, because especially if you're trying to do something new, you'll always come up with criticism. And how do you separate fact from conjecture? How do you take an idea and sort of nurture it and protect it? How do you test it? All of those things, I think, there's, and especially if you're trying to do something new. Henry Ford, the gentleman who mass-produced the motor car, once said if he had asked his customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Yeah.
So sometimes...
So you're saying you would have said, think more outside the box? Is that
I think so. I mean, new solutions, especially in a traditional thinking environment, and medicine's a very traditional thinking profession, can be hard to bring to life. Did
you have a mentor, or is it important to have a mentor?
Look, there are a couple of elderly cardiologists who I used to go out to lunch with, and they would say to me, Rolf, you're going to come up with some criticism from within the profession. People might think you're a little bit crazy, but if you think what you're doing is you're doing it for the right reasons, why not?
Yeah.
And I think that was good advice.
Okay, so they were the easy questions. Can we go to some of our alumni questions now? And the first one is from Judy. Good evening, Judy. What are some real life impacts you've seen from the establishment of the Heart of Australia, either on individuals or families or communities, or even regional health advocates and providers? Yeah. You got a good story?
Well, the other day I'd done a clinic in Theodore, and I'd been there for 2 days. And on the way back, I was thinking there was one lady who was feeling a bit short of breath. And in fact, this time it was her husband to say, well, don't tell me about it. Go up and have your heart checked. And she had a heart rate of 27 beats per minute and ended up with an urgent pacemaker. Otherwise, she probably would have died in her sleep. There's another fellow who needed an urgent operation on his mitral valve because his heart was essentially failing. So he ended up being referred to the Prince Charles Hospital where he had his operation. And then there was another lady, a Polish lady, a slim Polish lady, who told me she was breathless because she was unfit. And I looked at her and I said, how could you be unfit? and she had a genetic condition which she's now had an operation for. And I was catching the plane back and I thought, well, I've been there 48 hours and there's 3 patients who saw me. I told them what was wrong with their heart. I told them what needed to happen. They're going to get it done now. The next time I go back, it should all be fixed. And I loved it. I loved the directness, the direct benefit, the tangible benefit. I love coming up to Christmas, which is where we're entering now, because I can close my eyes and think of so many people I've seen personally who'll be spending Christmas with their families because they've turned up to their appointment.
Yeah. How does that make you feel?
I love it. I love it. You know, I love it because I'm a fairly simple person. I need the feedback loop to be fairly simple.
Well, that's a fairly good feedback loop, can I say. Widya from Indonesia asked this question. It says, it's lovely to hear how Heart of Australia has made such a big impact on improving access to healthcare. Can you share some success stories or memorable experiences from this journey? That was a little bit like Judy, our first question, but people love those stories about how you've actually changed lives. Give us another one.
Well, you know, you get some insight into what people appreciate about a service like this. You know, I was, many years ago, I was out in a place called Charleville, which is about 1,000 kilometres from Brisbane. And I saw this lady and she was crying, she was in tears. And I said to her, what's happened? And she said, on the radio this morning, they announced that Target, which was their local departmental store, was shutting up and leaving Charleville. And I thought, you know, coming from Brisbane, you wouldn't cry all day if your local supermarket left your shopping centre. But it made me realise the impact of when services are stripped away from these communities, what a devastating impact it has on the mental health of people who live there. You know, that this lady was crying, had been crying all morning because, you know, for her to go and buy a dinner set, she'd have to travel 500 kilometres. Yes. And, you know, this sense that we're being told, you know, be happy, don't worry, but the bank's gone, the post office is gone, now the Target store's leaving. And when these trucks roll into town, they don't just see it as a heart specialist coming to see them. They see it as, you know, someone's gone to a bit of effort to do something for them. They're not forgotten.
I don't want to get you in trouble here, but do our governments do enough? Have you been helped with public funding?
In the last few years, the federal government certainly has been helping us with some federal government funding. Recently, we've built the mobile CT scanner in partnership with the state government as a project to help screen minors. So slowly, I mean. But
most of your funding comes from supporters?
At least 50% of our funding comes from sponsors and supporters.
Our next question comes all the way from Bolivia. Good evening, Sergio. Could you elaborate on the logistics and technology involved in actually operating the mobile service? What are some of the key medical services and treatments you're able to provide to patients?
Yeah, so firstly, the clinics have to be up to scratch in terms of safety. You need our challenges. The Heart of Australia program is a logistical beast. In fact, the medicine for me is the simplest part. You know, it's by default you're running a sensitive freight company with CT scanners and equipment in trucks. You're running a transport company with drivers, fatigue. On top of that, you're running the medical service, and you know, with the sponsors and the government involved, you're running a communications company as well. So it's a very multifaceted thing, and everything has to come together to make it work. But certainly, power. You know, how long can you sit in town with your solar panels on the roof, charging your batteries so you don't have to get up and move? The first truck we made didn't have solar panels. We can stay in town for 4 days before we've got to go take it and plug it in somewhere. The latest truck can stay in town over a fortnight with the solar panels, the batteries, and so there's a certain evolution in the technology.
And what about, you've mentioned some of the equipment, but if someone goes to have a check tomorrow, let's say in Roma or Chinchilla, what are they offered?
Well, in fact, you could find more things when you walk up into those trucks than you can find in my cardiology practice in Brisbane. all the non-invasive cardiac investigations, but with the CT scanner now you can actually do a CT coronary angiogram. It's a hospital grade CT, and being battery powered, it means you can have a CT scan done in your backyard.
Yes.
It's in its first year of operation, it's delivered that service in over 70 locations. Recently, we had it on a barge sailing up the Cape to deliver some services there. So that level of mobility. And when we look at how much we rely on radiology in the practice of medicine, it literally allows you to look inside the body.
Sergio, I think that answered your question very well. Thank you. Chelsea is joining us from the UK and asks, as the driving force behind Heart of Australia, what are the future goals and aspirations for the organisation? How do you envisage the continued growth and impact into the future?
So Heart of Australia, it's called Heart of Australia because we'd like it to become a national program. That's our next immediate goal. Australia is a big country, a lot of scattered populations, not just restricted to Queensland.
Yes.
How do we make this a national program? You know, and we're talking to governments, talking to partners to see if they'll extend their support.
Hopeful?
Hopeful. I mean, if people know what the Flying Doctors Service is in Australia, we'd like this to become the land-based version of the Flying Doctors, where we deliver specialists and health clinicians out into the region.
So beyond cardiology services?
That's right. So we've got a whole range of specialists now, endocrinologists, gastroenterologists, neurologists. I started with cardiology because I'm a cardiologist, but really a whole range of specialists.
So GPs are in short supply in the bush, for example. Would you envisage taking GPs in the trucks, or are you already doing that?
Well, we have started delivering some GP services in some communities in partnership with recognised GP providers.
And are health providers volunteering their service? Are some retiring and putting their hand up, or where do you access the specialists from?
Well, the terrific thing is that we get more and more health specialists, especially, picking up the phone saying, we've heard about you, how can we be a part of this? And you know, I think the intent's always been there.
Yes.
But the engagement platform where they could plug and play into hasn't existed. So Heart of Australia is now that engagement platform where they can say, these guys will book my flights, arrange my accommodation, pick me up from the airport, arrange the patients, the equipment, the allied health staff. All I have to do is pack my stethoscope in my briefcase.
And offer my expertise.
And that's all we want them to do.
We've been talking a lot about your background and how you fell into this and how it's progressed. Camilla asks, and this is the last question from our alumni, what is your why?
My why is to give back to a country which has given me everything in terms of opportunity. That's probably my personal why, because I wouldn't have any of this if I was probably still living in India.
Yeah.
So my parents came here looking for a country with more opportunity, and it certainly fulfilled everything they could have imagined. So whilst I could do private practice cardiology every day, this has a lot broader social and national significance, and I enjoy it. I enjoy the country people. I'm very lucky to have stumbled across it.
And I think that we're lucky to have you too. And I've got a string of other questions, but I think that's a lovely place to answer it. Rolf Gomes, thanks for the generosity of your time and the generosity of your answers.
Oh, thank you, Madonna.
Thanks for having me as the host also. We are lucky to live in an age of global digital connectivity where our alumni across the globe can tune in and have these conversations. On behalf of our presenters and everyone here at UQ, thanks for joining us, and we really look forward to having you back for our next conversation. Good evening.